My ex used me to pay for her surgery while she dated another man's. I exposed everything publicly and walked away with her money. I'm a 27-year-old guy, and I've always believed love meant sacrifice. That might sound naive, but when you care about someone the way I cared about Emma, it doesn't feel like sacrifice, it feels like the only thing worth doing. We met in college, and I remember thinking she was different. Funny, sharp, and somehow effortlessly magnetic. Over the years, I built a stable, life-good job, steady savings, the kind of reliability that most people crave. And I wanted her to feel safe, supported, like she could chase her dreams without worrying about bills or rent. So, I paid. A lot. I never kept track, never complained. It felt natural. Early on, she confided in me about her health, about the surgery she might need, about complications she feared would affect her life forever. She didn't have to, but she trusted me. "I'm scared," she whispered one night on my couch, hands trembling. "What if something goes wrong?" I felt my chest tighten. I squeezed her hand and told her, "I'll handle it. Don't even think about it. We'll figure this together." That was me, falling deeper willingly, blind to the warning signs, but there were tiny things I brushed off. She'd disappear for hours, sometimes even whole afternoons, and laugh when I asked where she'd been. "Relax. It's just life," she'd say, brushing her hair behind her ear like it was no big deal. Sometimes she joked about money, casually tossing out comments that didn't sit right, but I laughed along, telling myself it was just humor, a quirk. Nothing serious. Then came the evening that planted the first real seed of responsibility in my mind. We were on my tiny balcony, city lights flickering below, when she said quietly, almost hesitantly, "This surgery. It's going to be expensive. I don't know how I'll manage it." But before she could finish, I felt a surge of certainty. "Don't even worry about a single penny," I said, gripping her shoulders. "I'll handle it. You just focus on getting better." I didn't know then how deep this responsibility would pull me, or how much it would cost, me not just in money, but in trust. And that's when the first doubts should have hit me. The next few weeks were a blur of doctor appointments, insurance forms, and late-night calls with hospital billing departments. I didn't mind. I liked feeling needed, like I was doing something meaningful for someone I loved. I rearranged my schedule, skipped dinners with friends, even stayed late at work to cover extra expenses without complaint. Emma seemed relieved almost, lighter. But there was something in the way she smiled that didn't quite reach her eyes. She was distant at times, slipping into rooms and closing doors behind her, phone pressed to her ear, too quickly to catch names or details. I wanted to trust her, and I told myself she had a right to privacy. Everyone does. Still, small things started gnawing at me. A friend texted, "Hey, did you see Emma at the cafe yesterday? With someone else?" I laughed nervously, replying, "Must be coincidence." But the seed of doubt was planted, and I felt it creep under my skin whenever she was out, without explanation. She started making casual jokes about money. Little things. "You're too generous. You know that? Or maybe you should keep some cash for yourself." Big spender. I smiled, laughed it off, because I wanted to believe she wasn't serious. Then one night, curled up on my couch with her, she whispered, voice trembling, "I don't want to worry you, but the surgery might be more expensive than we thought." Her fingers grazed mine, seeking comfort, and I felt my chest tighten again. "It's fine," I said, my voice firm, even as my stomach nodded. "I'll handle it. Just focus on getting better." I watched her sleep that night, the city lights spilling across her face, and told myself I was doing the right thing. Love meant sacrifice, right? That belief made the creeping doubts disappear for a few hours, replaced by a sense of purpose, a mission. But even as I drifted off, I noticed the faint glow of her phone on the nightstand, a small notification lighting up the screen. I didn't check it. I couldn't. I wanted to believe. And in that moment, unknowingly, I walked right into the trap that would unravel everything I thought I knew about her and about us. By the time the surgery was scheduled, I was running on adrenaline and worry. Every morning, I woke up checking my bank account, mentally calculating bills, hospital fees, and extra expenses, convincing myself it didn't matter because Emma needed me. I never complained, never kept track, and I never imagined I'd need proof of anything. Love didn't need receipts, right? But that's when the first cracks started to show. She'd get sudden phone calls, excusing herself mid-conversation with a casual, "It's just work stuff." But her voice sounded different, hurried, almost secretive. I started noticing small inconsistencies, too. One day she told me the nurse had scheduled her pre-op checkup at 11 a.m. But later, I ran into her walking out of a coffee shop at the same time, laughing with a man I didn't recognize. My chest sank. But I told myself it had to be innocent. A friend, a classmate, someone from her past. I didn't want to see the signs. And yet the feeling wouldn't go away. My gut screamed, but my heart refused to believe it. I stayed awake at night, listening for the little noises, wondering who she was texting so frantically, whose name was whispered when she thought I wasn't paying attention. I noticed subtle changes in how she talked about money, too. "You're spending so much," she'd say lightly, almost teasingly when I mentioned deposits or hospital fees, and yet she never offered to pitch in. One evening, as she leaned on my shoulder, I asked quietly, "Emma, is there anything you're not telling me?" She smiled, soft and disarming, and whispered, "I promise, everything's fine. Don't worry about me." I wanted to believe her. I reached for her hand, feeling that familiar weight in my chest, the mixture of love, trust, and unease. But even as I held her, I felt a tan invisible line she was already crossing, a truth I couldn't yet face. Something was wrong. Something I wasn't ready to see. And I didn't know just how far this lie would stretch, or how much it would cost me emotionally and financially. I wish I could say I saw it coming, but I didn't, not really. The first undeniable proof hit me like a punch to the gut. I was scrolling through my phone one late night, trying to unwind after yet another day of managing hospital bills, when a message popped up on her account, not mine accidentally left logged in on my tablet. There he was. Another man. Not a friend, not a distant cousin, not some harmless acquaintance. A man she'd been spending time with during the days she claimed to be recovering or at appointments I thought I was helping schedule. And she wasn't just seeing him casually. He was a constant. Texting her, sending pictures, even joking about the generous boyfriend who covers everything. My stomach churned, my hands shook. I stared at the screen, unable to breathe, heart hammering so hard I thought she'd hear it upstairs. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Every late-night excuse, every disappearing act, every casual joke about money, everything suddenly made sense. The betrayal wasn't subtle anymore. It was screaming at me, the worst part. I realized I had been funding it all. The hospital bills, the post-op care, the rent I covered so she could focus on recovery, all of it had indirectly helped her maintain this double life. My mind raced, and I felt both foolish and furious. I wanted to confront her, yell, throw my phone, do anything, but I was trapped between disbelief and the icy clarity of reality. I remembered the nights I stayed awake waiting for her, worrying, rearranging my life for her comfort, and now it was clear how I'd been manipulated. Every kind word, every tender gesture, every whispered thank you had been a tool to keep me blind. When she finally came downstairs that evening, smiling as though nothing had changed, I froze. I wanted to ask, to accuse, to throw the truth in her face, but instead, I swallowed the lump in my throat and said nothing. I told myself I was patient, that I needed to gather proof, but inside, I felt like I was standing on the edge of something dangerous. And deep down, I knew I couldn't keep pretending this was only the beginning of the reckoning. I hit a point I never thought I would reach, the kind of emptiness that makes your chest ache and your hands feel foreign. I kept replaying the messages in my head, the photos, every laugh, every excuse. Every night I had stayed awake worrying about her health. Every dollar I had sacrificed, every plan I had rearranged, it all felt like a lie. I felt like I'd been punched, not just in the stomach, but in the heart, soul, and wallet all at once. Friends tried to talk to me. "Told you something was off?" one said, awkwardly patting my shoulder. but their words felt hollow. How could they understand the depth of the trust I had given her, the life I had rearranged for her well-being? And the humiliation, the humiliation of knowing she had been living a parallel life, using me while laughing and texting someone else. While I played the part of the devoted boyfriend, I stared at my bank statements that night, cold sweat soaking through my shirt. Every transaction I had made on her behalf was highlighted in red in my mind. Money I had saved for years, my emergency fund, a chunk of my rent, grocery set, had all been funneled to cover her other life. And I realized then, really realized, just how far this went. She didn't just deceive me emotionally, she had bled me dry financially too. The weight of betrayal was suffocating. I wanted to scream, to punch a wall, to throw my phone into oblivion. But instead, I just sat there, shaking, staring at the ceiling. I felt powerless, stupid, and utterly alone. I couldn't even trust my own judgment anymore. And yet, in that suffocating darkness, a flicker of something began to form a cold, calculated awareness that this wasn't the end of my story. I couldn't stay broken. I couldn't keep being her victim. I had to find a way to make this right, but I had no idea just how far I'd need to go to reclaim what was mine, and to expose the truth to everyone who thought she was the innocent, helpless girl I had once believed she was. After that night, I couldn't sleep. Not really. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the texts, the photos, the evidence of her living a double life while I bled myself dry. I realized something important. Anger wasn't enough. Tears weren't enough. I needed proof. Real proof. Something that would stand up to anyone who doubted me. Something that would leave no room for excuses. I started methodically. Bank statements, transaction histories, screenshots of messages, timestamps of her disappearing for hours at a time. Everything I had ignored suddenly became vital. Every little slip she'd made, every casual excuse, every joke about money or time away from MIT, all began to fit together like a puzzle I hadn't wanted to see. I even reached out to mutual friends subtly, asking questions, gathering small confirmations that I could piece into something undeniable. The tension was unbearable. Emma noticed my quiet focus and began asking, "Why are you so distracted?" I just smiled, careful not to give anything away. "Just work," I'd say. Inside, my blood boiled. Every lie she had told, every betrayal, every single dollar I had spent to support a life that wasn't mine, she would answer for it. The apartment felt different too. Every room, every corner, every memory of laughter now carried the faint taste of betrayal. I could see her on the couch, scrolling on her phone, unaware of what I was doing behind the scenes. I felt a strange thrill mixed with fear. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had some control, like I could take back the narrative. And yet, there was a gnawing worry. Knew she was clever. I had to move carefully, or this could backfire spectacularly. One wrong step, one poorly timed reveal, and all my efforts could collapse. I sat at my desk that night, surrounded by evidence, heart pounding, realizing for the first time that I wasn't just preparing to confront her emotionally, I was preparing to expose the truth publicly, and deep down, I knew that once I started, nothing could stop the reckoning. By the time I reached part 7 in my mental checklist, planning how to confront her, I realized something chilling. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about survival, about reclaiming what I'd lost, about proving to myself that I wouldn't be anyone's fool again. I spent hours pacing my apartment, laptop open, evidence spread around me, thinking about timing, wording, and audience. If I revealed everything too soon, she might twist the story, deny it, or manipulate the narrative to make me look insane. I couldn't allow that. I started rehearsing in my head, practicing my words, imagining her reactions. "Emma, I know everything," I'd say, calm but unwavering. I could feel her smirk, the shock, maybe the anger, but I needed to stay steady. I needed her to feel the full weight of her choices. I needed the world to see it too. The tension in our apartment was unbearable. She started acting differently, noticing my quiet intensity. "You're distant lately. Everything okay?" she asked, tilting her head, eyes suspicious. I smiled, careful not to betray anything. Just stressed with work, I murmured, but inside, every nerve was on fire. I was calculating, measuring, waiting for the perfect moment. Every night, I reviewed the proof screenshots, bank transfers, timestamps, and the friends who could corroborate her lies. I even drafted a timeline, knowing that once I went public, there could be no room for her denials. I could feel the shift inside me, anger transforming into focus, hurt transforming into strategy. But the scariest part, knowing that once I pulled the trigger, there was no going back. This confrontation wasn't just personal, it would be public, irreversible, and potentially devastating. I kept reminding myself, patience, precision, control. And as I turned off the lights that night, the apartment silent except for the hum of the city. I felt it, the electricity of impending justice. The reckoning was near, and I was finally ready. The night I decided to go public. My hands shook not from fear, but from the weight of everything I'd carried for months. I had my screenshots, my bank statements, timestamps, and corroborating messages all ready. I knew I couldn't do this half-heartedly. There would be no second chances, no room for doubt. I opened my laptop, heart hammering, and began posting everything, every lie, every betrayal, every dollar she had taken while pretending to be sick. Almost immediately, the notifications began. Comments, messages, friends, tagging others, people I hadn't even thought would care. The flood of shock and outrage was surreal, and I felt a strange mix of vindication and relief. She was reading it too. I was sure, her smugness gone, replaced with panic. I imagined her scrolling through the evidence I had compiled, realizing that no denial could save her this time. When she came into the room, face pale, eyes wide, I stayed seated, calm, letting the words and images speak for themselves. Emma, you need to explain this, I said quietly, voice steady. She stammered, tried to laugh it off, but I could see it, the cracks, the fear, the realization that her carefully constructed lie had collapsed. The apartment felt tense, charged every corner, echoing with months of betrayal now laid bare. Friends who were watching the post unfold texted me, offering support, confirming what I already knew. I was not alone. She tried to grab my phone, tried to delete things, but it was too late. The world had seen everything. For the first time in weeks, I felt power. I wasn't the victim anymore. I wasn't the fool who gave everything and got nothing in return. The betrayal had been exposed and justice messy public, and satisfying was mine. And yet, even as relief washed over me, I couldn't stop thinking. What would she do next? How far would her desperation go now that the truth was out? I knew this wasn't over. Not entirely. The next morning, the aftermath hit like a tidal wave. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing messages from friends, strangers, even colleagues who had stumbled across the posts. Are you serious? I can't believe she did this. You're not alone. Man, the validation was overwhelming, and yet part of me still felt drained, like the weight of months of betrayal was finally settling in. Emma barely spoke to me. She hovered around the apartment, frantic, trying to explain herself, but there was nothing to say. Every excuse she had ever given was crumbling under the evidence I had laid bare. You don't understand, She started, but I cut her off gently, though my voice carried steel. I understand perfectly, and everyone else does too. Friends who had been quiet for months began chiming in online, sharing their own experiences with her, confirming the pattern I had uncovered. People I barely knew reached out to warn me how far her lies had spread. The sense of betrayal was shifting, no longer began to mingle with relief. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't crazy. She had manipulated me, used me, and thought she could get away with it. It was strange, seeing the social consequences unfold. Mutual friends started taking sides, but the weight of truth was undeniable. Even her own circle was whispering behind her back, shocked by the audacity and audibility of her deception. I realized just how deep the hole she'd dug for herself really was, and for the first time, I felt a kind of grim satisfaction. Yet, even as the world validated my anger, I felt the tiniest flicker of unease. This exposure had shifted power. Yes, but the emotional fallout wasn't over. How would she react next? Would she try to fight back? To spin the story? Could this spiral further, dragging me through drama I hadn't anticipated? And in that moment, I understood that while the public reckoning had begun, the real test of patience, strategy, and control was still ahead. After the storm of messages and comments, I finally allowed myself a moment to breathe. The adrenaline was fading, leaving me drained but strangely lighter. For months, I'd carried this weight of betrayal, of manipulation, a financial and emotional exhaustion, and, for the first time, I didn't have to. The truth was out, and with it came a strange clarity I hadn't felt in ages. I spent the morning scrolling through the post, reading replies from strangers who had experienced similar betrayals. They shared stories, advice, and even validation I didn't know I needed. "You're not alone. I've been there too. You did the right thing." Each comment chipped away at the lingering self-doubt, reminding me that this wasn't a reflection of my worth. It was a reflection of her deceit. Emma tried to reach out. Once, twice, pleading, crying, claiming remorse, but I didn't respond. I realized then that closure didn't come from her. It came from me, from reclaiming control of my life, my finances, and my dignity. I walked around the apartment, noticing how quiet it felt without the constant tension of her lies pressing down on me. I could breathe again, eat without anxiety, and think without fear of being blindsided. Even the money she had taken, the bills I'd covered, felt different now. It wasn't just reimbursement, it was a symbol of reclaiming what I had given freely, establishing boundaries I should never have let be crossed. I could see the road ahead more clearly, a life where I chose whom to trust, how much to give, and when to walk away. And though part of me still ached for what I had believed we shared, I felt stronger. Not bitter, not broken, but awake, aware, and ready to move forward. The betrayal had taught me a harsh lesson, yes, but it had also reminded me who I was, and who I would never let anyone else manipulate me into being again. And in that quiet morning light, I finally felt free. Just when I thought I had closure, life had one more surprise in store. I was going through old bank statements one evening, double-checking everything for my own peace of mind, when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. There were transfers I hadn't accounted for, small, almost invisible, but definitely hers. She had hidden even more financial abuse than I realized. Months of money I thought I'd spent supporting her health and recovery had been quietly diverted for her luxuries. Trips, even gifts to him, the man she'd been seeing all along. I felt a strange mixture of rage and disbelief. How had I missed this? How had she manipulated me so completely? I could almost hear her smug laugh in my head, the way she thought she was untouchable. But this time, I didn't panic. I didn't despair. I realized I had something she didn't: proof, patience, and control. I could expose this too, show the full scope of her deceit, and ensure she couldn't escape accountability. I made a plan. One last post, one final thread of truth, carefully compiled, chronological, undeniable. I included every transaction, every message, every lie, every tiny move she thought I hadn't noticed. I felt a thrill that was part vindication, part terrifying responsibility. It wasn't about revenge for the sake of cruelty. It was about reclaiming power, making sure that anyone who might have been deceived, manipulated, or misled by her would know the truth. And when I finally hit post, I watched the world react. Comments poured in, shock and outrage flooding in from friends, strangers, and people I didn't even know. Her empire of lies crumbled publicly, and I felt the last weight lift off my shoulders. In that moment, I realized something crucial. Betrayal had tried to define me, but truth had the power to free me. And though I'd been pushed to the edge, emotionally and financially, I had turned the tables completely, the final chapter walking away. Stronger, unbroken, was closer than ever. The day I decided to walk away, I felt lighter than I had in months, maybe even years. I packed up the last of my things, double-checked the apartment, and left a note on the counter. Simple, factual, and final. No anger, no pleading, no explanations, just the truth I had uncovered, laid bare for anyone who might have doubted it. I didn't wait for a reaction. I didn't need one. This was my ending, and it was mine alone to own. For the first time, I let myself breathe without guilt. Every dollar she had taken, every lie she had told, every sleepless night I had endured was behind me now. I had reclaimed not just my money, but my sense of self, my dignity, and my boundaries. Walking out that door, I realized I had also taken something far more valuable, my power. No one could manipulate me again. No one could exploit my trust. I reflected on the months of betrayal, the financial drain, the sleepless nights, and the emotional torment, and I realized how far I had come. I wasn't the same person who had blindly trusted her, the one who had sacrificed without question. I was sharper, wiser, and unshakably strong. Betrayal had tried to break me, but it had only made me see my own worth. And the best part? I didn't need revenge to feel victorious. The public exposure, the truth out in the open, the validation from friends, strangers, even those who had doubted my all of it was enough. Emma was left with the consequences of her choices. While I walked into a life free of manipulation, full of potential, and firmly in my own control, I stepped out into the sunlight, city buzzing around me. Feeling it on my skin for the first time in months, without the weight of her lies pressing down. I smiled not because I hated her, not because I wanted to rub her face in it, but because I had survived. I had fought, and I had finally, fully walked away. For the first time in a long time, I was free.